Hi everyone, so we are going to finish up our terrestrial biomes today, starting with our savanna. So savanna is probably one that you're pretty familiar with, so this would be like the African savanna with the lions, elephants, giraffes, all of those different types of animals here. So the savanna receives less precipitation than our tropical dry forest, but more than our deserts. So it usually has a very distinct rainy season. So there's a dry season here and a rain season. We're going to see a lot of grasses here and few groups of trees because of that rainfall. Remember, larger organisms require more water. Tree growth is going to be limited though because of frequent fires and strong winds like we saw with our grasslands. Plants are adapted to these dry conditions, tend to be deciduous. Remember, deciduous means they lose their leaves, with really deep roots, thick bark, and waxy coatings on their leaves. So animals found here are going to migrate to find water or burrow, so bury themselves when water is very scarce in the area. So savannas, you can see, we see a few wet seasons here. So those would be the wet seasons, but a very, very consistent temperature that we see here. And again, we're going to see it towards the equator with those high temperatures and below in our southern part of the world, our southern hemisphere. So plants that we're going to see here, because most of the rain falls during a wet season, plants must be able to survive long periods without water. So some of the adaptations that we're going to see are those waxy leaves to prevent water loss. We're also going to see those deep roots so we can keep the water in the ground, get water from there as well. So those are different types of adaptations that we're going to see here. Our next biome is called the chaparral. So we have very highly seasonal conditions. So we're going to see mild, wet winters with warm, dry summers. So there's prolonged hot and dry periods, and those are going to cause droughts and fires. Plants are usually going to be really drought resistant, and because of that, they're going to have thick, waxy leaves or leaves that have hairs to trap moisture. And again, those succulents are going to be common. So succulents, remember, a type of succulent is a cactus, but there are a bunch of different types. So these are some adaptations for our plants here. They also might have thick bark and deep roots to resist fire. And really interestingly enough, that some plants are actually going to require fire to germinate, which is another interesting adaptation that these have produced. Animals, again, in this area are going to burrow or are nocturnal to avoid the heat in these areas. So these are some characteristics of this type of biome. Again, we'll see wet seasons and dry seasons, but usually a pretty consistent temperature here as well, a little bit milder than our savanna. And we're going to find these kind of up as we move up in latitude and down in latitude about 30 degrees. So plants, most are low-lying, so that means different types of shrubs, small trees that tend to grow in patches, and a couple types of these would be casmes, mantazina, scrub oak tree, and then herbs like sage. Fires are going to destroy any other competing tree, so that's why these trees are most popular. They've learned to adapt to these conditions, so they're able to survive those fires. These plants are also well adapted to fire, and they're going to re-sprout from bits of surviving plant tissues. So maybe not specifically a seed, but they can take from any part of that surviving tissue and grow again, which is a unique characteristic here. Our last biome here is going to be the tundra. In the tundra, we're going to see extremely cold and dark winters and relatively sunny and cool summers. So this is an interesting one. Tundras are up way high up. So we're going to see in the summer, we're going to have a lot more sunlight than we're going to see in the winters. So very high latitudes of the northern hemisphere. Harsh winds, poor nutrient soil, freezing temperatures, limited plant growth, no tall trees at all. And then mosses and lichens are going to be common in these areas.
Into the nurse's office, please.
So these types of plants are going to be really common in these areas. Tundra is characterized by what we call permafrost. So this is going to be an important term here, permafrost. So underground soil that is frozen year-round. So this soil is always frozen. Types of animals that are going to live here, there are some birds and caribou. Caribou is kind of a deer-like animal that are going to migrate to the tundra during our summertime to feed on different insects and these lectins. Only a few species are going to be here year-round because of those really harsh temperatures and climates here. So tundra can be characterized as a treeless plain located in the Arctic and Antarctica that is characterized by a very low winter temperature and short, cool summers. Vegetations are going to see grasses, lichen, and perennial herbs. So summers are so short that only a few centimeters of that soil thaws in the summertime. So it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for different plants to grow, which is why plants here are going to be pretty highly specialized. Permafrost is the permanently frozen layer of soil or subsoil that can be found. So this is going to be an important term, permafrost. So if we take a look at our tundra, we actually do get quite a bit of precipitation, but it's mostly going to be snow here. But we can also see this huge variation in temperatures here. Super, super cold winter seasons, and our summer season is still pretty cold as well. And like we mentioned before, only in the very upper part of our northern hemisphere here. So vegetation that we're going to find, again, mosses and lichens can grow without soil and cover vast areas of rocks here. So this is a special requirement here. They don't need soil to grow, which is why they're going to be important. Since the soil is so thin, plants are going to have wide, shallow roots to help them anchor against our winds here. Plants that are going to flower are going to be short and keep them out of the wind, and also is going to help us absorb heat from sunlit soil. Woody plants and perennials are going to have evolved into dwarf forms, so smaller forms that are along the ground, again, to protect them from that wind of the tundra and the very cold areas. So that's the end of our terrestrial biomes. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask.